17 years old, thin with hollow eyes and a silence that had followed him since childhood. No one expected anything significant from someone like him, and maybe that's exactly why what he did shocked the world. It was July 11, 1980, just another day at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Crowded terminals, flight announcements, luggage being shuffled from hand to hand. At Gate 608 of Northwest Orient Airlines, passengers were boarding a commercial Boeing 727 headed for Portland. Among them, Glenn. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring you more true stories hidden in the shadows, stories the world tried to forget. He looked calm, almost detached from reality, wore plain clothes, carried a small black briefcase, paid for his ticket in cash, and took a seat near the rear of the plane, coincidentally the same model and seating area used by D.B. Cooper 9 years earlier. Coincidence or blueprint? Takeoff went smoothly, but just minutes into the flight, a flight attendant received a handwritten note. At first she assumed it was a joke, but as she read the message, her hands began to tremble. "I have a bomb. I want $600,000, 2 parachutes, and a direct flight to Afghanistan. Do what I say and no one gets hurt." The crew had trained for this moment. The pilot quietly radioed for help. FBI teams were dispatched instantly. Outside, no one knew what was happening. Inside, the tension simmered just beneath the surface. Glenn didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He sat calmly sipping his soda, eyes fixed on the crew. His demeanor was eerie, controlled, composed, but he was still just a kid. The briefcase he held was locked. He claimed it held explosives. No one dared test him. After D.B. Cooper, no one wanted to repeat history. But there was something about this hijacking that felt juvenile, improvised, desperate. The plane began to circle above Seattle. Negotiations stretched over 10 hours. Glenn initially held all the passengers on board, but slowly began releasing them. And over time, his demands softened. He no longer wanted millions. He wanted cheeseburgers, a rental car. He said he just wanted to disappear. And in his fragile state, he seemed to believe it was still possible. A seasoned flight attendant offered him a soda, laced with Valium. Glenn drank it. His words became sluggish. His posture relaxed. The FBI knew their chance was coming. When he finally left the aircraft to claim the rental car, agents moved in. No shots were fired. No one was harmed. The briefcase was empty. What they found was a young man who wanted to matter, who had imagined a moment where the world would see him, and for a few hours, it did. The media was stunned. A teenage hijacker, no weapon, no violence, just desperation. The court was lenient, probation, no prison time. He went home. But something inside Glenn had changed. He had tasted the power, the attention, and he couldn't live without it. 3 years later, January 1983, Glenn Tripp returned to the airport. Same airline, same aircraft model, same black. Case, same plan. This time he demanded the plane be rerouted to Afghanistan. Claimed he had a bomb. He released half the passengers, keeping the others on board. But the FBI wasn't taking chances this time. He was no longer a teenager. They saw him as a threat. Agents surrounded the plane, crawled through cockpit windows, positioned themselves for a breach. Inside, Glenn noticed, raised his box, said to contain explosives, and threatened to throw it. A single shot rang out. Glenn collapsed, killed instantly by a federal agent. The box was later found to be filled with crumpled paper. No wires, no bomb, no escape plan. Just a 20-year-old man, dead in the middle of his final performance. He had staged his last act with the same materials as his life: illusion, fear, and the desperate need to be seen. In FBI files, Glenn Tripp is just another case. But in the darker corners of American criminal history, he represents something far more unsettling. A reflection of an invisible pain. A reminder of how dangerously far someone will go just to feel real. He wasn't driven by greed or ideology, or revenge. He was driven by silence, by the weight of being no one. And for a brief moment in both 1980 and 1983, he believed he had become someone the world could never forget. If D.B. Cooper became a legend for disappearing without a trace, Glenn Tripp became a cautionary echo, a broken mirror reflecting a tragedy that didn't have to happen. Some saw him as a joke, others as a lost soul. But what no one could deny was that he forced the world to look directly into a kind of madness that doesn't scream, it whispers. In his death, there were no headlines for days. No global search, no conspiracy forums, just a body, a box of paper, and a silence deeper than anything he'd ever carried. In the wake of his actions, aviation protocols changed, air marshals were reinforced, cabin access was reevaluated, airline staff were trained to detect subtle signs of psychological instability. Glenn's name wasn't written in the sky, but its shadow was etched into every boarding gate from that day forward. There are people like Glenn Tripp in every generation, young, invisible, emotionally volatile. They walk among us in classrooms, shopping malls, airports. Some cry for help. Others remain silent until the silence breaks them. Tripp's tragedy was not only in what he did, but in how long no one noticed him before it was too late. In the cold silence of FBI records, Glenn Tripp is another name on a list. But in the dim spaces where society forgets its wounded, his ghost lingers. Not because he was dangerous, but because he was forgotten. That's the kind of story that haunts, not with violence, but with the quiet realization that somewhere, someone, like Glenn, might be watching, waiting, wanting nothing, except to finally be seen. Some say Glenn Tripp was just mentally unstable, a sad product of poor upbringing, untreated anxiety, and misguided attention-seeking. But that explanation is too easy, too convenient. It lets society off the hook. Because the truth is, he was a reflection of something many refuse to see. Young people falling through the cracks, aching to matter in a world that moves too fast to care. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He didn't want to destroy. He wanted to interrupt, to stop the noise, to make the world ask, who was that? And that's what makes his story terrifying. Not because of the danger, but because of the desperation. Because what if there are others out there with the same quiet scream? In the end, Glenn Tripp didn't hijack a plane to make history. He did it because he didn't know how else to exist. And now, decades later, all that remains is a case file, a bullet, and a haunting. Question: how many more will we ignore until they no longer stay silent?